afternoon, students, and welcome to our second video. Now we are going to enter into the second topic where we'll be talking about the evolution of management thought. Now, management did not just start at a particular time. It started a very long time ago, and now we usually have four different fields of management. The first one is what usually called the pre-classical or the ancient management. Now this usually started around you can talk about 4000 BC, where you had the ancient Greeks when they decided that they wanted to explain or to find a good way of explaining how things went. Say before around 4000. Then you can think of around 1500 BC when the Egyptians were building the pyramids. Of course, there is no way you could have built the pyramids without a very good theory of management. But for our course, we'll just focus mainly on these three. That is the classical school, the behavioral school, and the management science school. Because of course the pre-classical were not that sophisticated as you'd have expected. So let's just go through what was under the classical school. Now another thing that you should understand is that sometimes you usually call them the thoughts. Sometimes you may call it the classical thought or the classical school of thought. Now, we had a number of people that were of the classical sense. Actually, we had under the classical thought, we had something called scientific management. Now, the scientific management was carried out by some guys called, we can talk about Taylor first. Now, Taylor Frank Taylor came with a number of things under the scientific management, where he said that he took a number of people and told them to do a certain number of jobs, and then he realized that worker morale was really affected by how they were working together. He actually worked at a steel farm and came up with a number of things. So he found four major principles in that the way that people perform a specific task can actually be determined by following them through. And then he also found out that intimate and friendly cooperation between the management and the subordinate improved the amount of work that could have been done, and so on. And then it was important under this scientific management, according to Frederick Taylor, it was important for the management to make sure the members of the organization received an education. Okay. Now he came up with a number of principles that I'm so sure we talked about in the previous topic. Still under scientific management, we had some guys called the Gilberts. And I believe these guys were, they were actually a couple that came up with a different notion of how scientific management works, and in that they looked at how a bricklayer or a mason usually works, and came up with he realized that in order to if you improve the morale of your workers, if you improve what they actually have to do, then the overall output of your management will be better. Still under the scientific management, still in the classical thought, we had Henry Gantt. Now Henry Gantt was rather different from what the other people believed. Gantt came up with something called a Gantt chart that could actually find out Gantt was actually an associate of Frederick Taylor, because they usually worked together under this. Okay. Now, one thing you should try and understand under the classical school of thought, they are what we call the principles of management. These are the same ones that we call them the 14 principles, and in every NEC exam that has been given, there's always that question where they ask you to explain the principles of this management. Now maybe let's go to the next part. Still under this, we had something called the Weber's bureaucracy that is rather well explained. Now let's go to the behavioral school. Now the theories under the classical and the scientific management really neglected the human element. Did not think about as people as workers, but rather thought of people as machines. Okay, So the behavioral school wanted to bridge that gap and come and realize that people were not machines that could be timed and to be told to do this so that they can get something out of it. And that's now where the behavioral school of management theory came up from. Now, we had a number of people that talked about this. We had Mary Parker. Mary Parker was a great advocate of this. Then we had Chester L. Barnard and so on. At the current moment, these things are very well explained by reading the notes, but maybe let me explain for someone that has seen this in the past papers. Elton Meyer and Hawthorne Experiment. Those are the questions that usually come. So, Elton Meyer is usually referred to as the father of the human relations movement. Okay? When you're studying human relations, you really need to understand Elton Meyer, because he's actually the one who came up with a number of ways to describe how managers interact with their subordinates. So there's a number of experiments that Elton Meyer and his associates that are usually called the Hawthorne experiments. Okay, there are those Hawthorne experiments that were conducted by him, where they subjected them to different situations and different levels of work to find out who are the best, which type of management was the best, and they actually came up with a number of conclusions. Maybe I can just the fact that they focused on the human relations part. The Hawthorne experiment focused on the human relations part, and it allowed more organizations to be able to find a way that whatever they were doing could actually provide them with it highlighted the importance of the manager's style of management to the outcome of whatever was being carried out. Okay, that was the general outcome of that. So let's talk about the quantitative school of management. This is the management science. It's also called the quantitative school of management, where you're trying to come up with a theory of management that thinks about the quantity and quality of the outcome, and that's why we call it the quantitative school of management. Now, it is usually divided into three groups. You usually have the management science, then we usually have operations management, and finally we have MIS, or the management information systems. Now, these are the ones that are nowadays they are usually used by companies. Like the management information systems is usually a way to make sure that people don't spend their online time. Maybe you expect people to be working in the office, but 90% of them maybe are in other social media sites. There's a way to mitigate that under MIS. Then operations management. Remember, there's something we usually talk about. You can think of resources in a company. They're always scarce. Okay. However, the aim of the company is to make profits. Therefore, an operations management usually find the most specific, or the most precise, or the most robust way to make sure that these scarce resources are used in the best way. You don't want wastage. Actually, operations management always tries to find the optimum, that was the word, optimum way to utilize scarce resources in an organization that is trying to make profits. And then management science is the use of technology to improve the general output. So that's generally what this topic is about, the evolution of management thought, how it started from being a small issue to growing to being a very large part of management. So next time we'll come and start the third topic, which is the planning function of management. Thank you and have a great evening.